Hello everybody. Today we're going to be revisiting fractions and making sure we understand what they are, how to write them, how to identify them, how to place them on a number line, how to compare them, and for fourth graders, how to find equivalent fractions. So the big thing I want you guys to really come away with this year is that fractions are equal parts of a whole. That's really important to understand and to know. A fraction is a part of a whole. Okay, so if we think of a whole rectangle or a whole candy bar that I divide into equal parts, I have 4 equal parts here. If I decide to shade one of my equal parts, I have shaded what we call 1/4 because I have one part shaded out of a total of 4 equal parts. Okay, so just a reminder, the top number is called your numerator. The bottom number is called your denominator. Okay, and the top number tells you what portion or what part of the whole you're talking about. The bottom number tells you how many parts is the whole broken into. So if I look at something like a circle that I partition into thirds here, and if I shade 2 of them, well, I have 2 parts shaded out of 3 total parts. So this is called 2/3. Okay, so so being able to look at a being able to look at a picture where you have some parts shaded and some parts not shaded, or maybe all of the parts are shaded. Taking a look at how many parts are shaded for the numerator out of how many total parts for the denominator. Okay, I also want to review partitioning because several of you got a little confused with thirds. For thirds, you have to do sort of that peace sign look for circles, but when you get to a rectangle or a square, that doesn't work to be equal anymore. So in order to partition a rectangle or a square into thirds, you're going to have to do either nice equal horizontal lines or nice equal vertical lines to get thirds. Okay, so just keep in mind, thirds with a circle is wonky, but thirds with everything else kind of sticks with that window pane idea. Okay, to show the same thing on a number line, you're going to think about your end points. So let's say we wanted to show 2/3 on a number line. Well, the first thing you want to think about is what whole numbers is 2/3 in between. Well, if we look back up here at our 2/3, it's not a whole circle, right? It's only 2 out of 3 parts of a circle. So we know it's got to be between the numbers 0 and 1 on the number line. It's got to be between 0 and 1 whole because we know it's less than 1 whole. So to place 2/3, I then partition my number line into 3 equal parts by drawing 2 lines. And then I go ahead and label my fractions. So starting at 0, this is 0/3, 1/3, 2/3, and 3/3. Remember, check your end point. Okay, if you have 1 whole, you should have it say 3/3. If you end up with 4/3 under 1 whole, you know you've got a mistake. Okay, remember 1 whole is going to be the same numerator and the same denominator, 3 parts out of 3 parts. Okay, and then to point to where 2/3 is, you place your point on the number line. If you want to label something larger than 1 whole, let's say 6/4, well, first of all, one thing that's going to clue you to a larger than a whole is if your numerator is larger than your denominator. So in this case, I know it's going to be larger than 1 whole, so I'm not going to put a 0 over here. I'm going to put a 1. I may want to draw out my fourths really quickly just to kind of see how many fourths 6/4 really is. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6/4. So I know 6/4 is going to be somewhere between the number 1 and the whole number 2. Okay, remember 6/4 is a fraction. It's some parts of a whole, but it could be a whole and some more, like 1.5, right? If you have 1.5 cookies, you have 1 whole cookie and part of another cookie. That's what's happening here. If you have 6/4, you're going to have a whole candy bar plus some more. And then we're going to go ahead and label. Remember, looking at your end points, 1 whole is equal to 4/4. You don't want to start at 0 first this time. We're starting at 4/4. Now I'm going to partition my number line into 4 equal parts, and I'm going to keep counting. 5/4, 6/4, 7/4, 8/4. fourths. Okay? And then I'm going to put my point where 6/4 is on the number line. So you really want to make sure you're thinking about what does that fraction mean? And if you have to draw it out to understand and visualize what that fraction looks like, do that. That's really, really, really helpful. Okay? When we're asked to compare fractions, like 2/3 compared to 1/3, if they have the same denominator, you can just look at your numerator, and whichever numerator is larger, you know that's the larger fraction. So 2/3, if I draw it out, I can compare as well. 2/3 is clearly going to be larger than 1/3. One thing you have to be careful of if you draw it is to make your holes the same size and to partition equally. So even on my example, I made a little bit of a mistake. It's not quite accurate. So that looks a little bit better. And you can clearly see 2/3 is greater than 1/3. If you have fractions that do not have equal portions, okay, they are not the same unit. Our denominator is different, fourths versus halves. You may want to think about drawing. If you take 1/4 compared to 1/2, you can then easily see which is larger, and you can tell 1/2 is larger compared to 1/4. But you can also think of it this way. If you have 1/2, you've taken the whole of something and split it into 2 equal parts. If you have 1/4, you've taken the whole of something and split it into 4 equal parts. If you think about whether you'd get a half of a pizza or a fourth of a pizza, which piece is going to be larger? Well, clearly the half is going to be larger because you only broke it into 2 parts instead of 4. Okay? So I want you to be thinking about those strategies. For 4th graders, we also talked about finding equivalent fractions by multiplying and by dividing. So if I asked you to find an equivalent fraction for 2/3, you can simply say, okay, I'll take 2/3 and multiply each part by 2, which is really just multiplying by 1. Look, 2/2 is equal to 1 whole, right? So you're just multiplying by 1. And if I multiply across, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 2 is 6. So I know 4/6 is equal to 2/3 by using multiplication. If I want to find an equivalent fraction with division, we're going to do the reverse. So we're going to start with something like maybe 9/12. And what you're going to do is you're going to think about what number can both 9 and 12 be divided by equally. Well, you might think, well, I know 12 is divisible by 6. Okay, but is 9, can I do 9 divided by 6? I can't. I can do 12 divided by 2, but I can't do 9 divided by 2. I can do 12 divided by 3, and I can do 9 divided by 3. So I'm going to divide each one by 3, which is dividing by 3/3. Again, dividing by 1 whole. We're not changing how much. We're just finding a fraction that is the equal size. So 9 divided by 3 is 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So an equivalent fraction for 9/12 is 3/4 through using division. Okay? So today you're just going to practice, kind of reacquaint yourself with fractions, make sure you've got it, make sure you understand them. Let me know if you need any help, and